Reflection, Chapter 23. She hacked at the metal chain with her blade, tossing its remains on the ground with a clatter. She stared defiantly at the demons. She didn't know which one had tried to pull her back, but their message was clear. Time to fight. She staggered to regain her balance and tightened her grip on her sword. The hilt was warm from the fire and heat. The characters engraved in the steel shone. "Use your sword," Shishi had said. What was that supposed to mean? She'd been fighting with it all this time. What did she need to do differently? Mulan rubbed the steam off her blade. "The flower that blooms in adversity is the most rare and beautiful of all," she murmured, reading the quotation engraved on it again. The words didn't give her any secret key to defeating the demons. She returned her attention to the demons. One in the front row spat, his webbed feet sinking deep into the sizzling ground. The rest lashed at her feet with their chains, taunting her as she jumped out of the way. She staggered back, almost slipping thanks to the pile of bones. "Look at him dance," they laughed. "Don't fall off the cliff, human. You need to roast a bit first." She inhaled and glanced at her reflection in her sword. Dirt smudged her cheeks, sweat dribbled down her temples, and her arms writhed with fatigue. She looked tired and afraid. Not exactly the rare and beautiful flower this sword's been waiting for, thought Mulan, but if I think like that, I'm never going to defeat these demons. She looked down at her hands. They were clasping the sword so tight her knuckles were white. She swallowed. I can't be afraid. If I am, all is lost. The sword had glowed earlier when Mulan faced the bandit ghost. What had she done to invoke its power? I'd been trying to protect my friends, she remembered. The bandits attacked, and I just raised the sword without knowing its power. Maybe that was the key. Skill wasn't enough to bring the sword alive. It was her courage and strength, her need to save Shang and Shishi from Hu Guai and take Shang back to the real world where he was still needed. Instinct had overcome doubt. With a nod to herself, she raised the sword high above her head. I need to get to Hu Guai so I can protect my friends, she thought. Help me, please. As before, slowly the sword began to glow. Mulan faced her opponents, her confidence returning. You want to fight? Then come get me. The demons hissed. They grunted and shuffled their feet, preparing to charge, but as they lunged for Mulan, her blade burned brighter than the lava spitting from the ground, brighter even than Hu Guai's fire. The demons recoiled at its brightness. Stop! I can't see! Pressing her sword's hilt against her rib, she charged between two of the demons, slashing their sides with her blade. Ash spilled from the demons' guts, and they howled with surprise. Mulan dodged as they attacked her blindly. A few ran too far, tripping over the edge of the rim and tumbling off the mountainside. Look away! One of the demons shouted, blocking his view of her sword with his shield. He has the sword of the blazing sun. The hero of legend has returned, the demon screeched. The hero with the sword of the blazing sun. Mulan's ears perked. The hero with the sword of the blazing sun? Her father used to tell her a story about a hero, half man and half god, who had lived thousands of years ago when monsters and demons still roamed China's lands. The emperor had asked the demigod, who was known everywhere in China for his great fighting prowess, to expunge the monsters that terrorized China and send them into Daiyu. The emperor, who also had powers from heavens, gave the demigod a magical sword that glowed with the light of the sun. It could cut through anything, even the sword of demons and ghosts. But only the demigod could unlock its power. Mulan had always thought the story was only a legend, but could it be that the sword she found was the same one? Maybe the demigod had left it in Daiyu when he died. In her tales of the underworld, Grandmother Fa always mentioned that even heroes and famous warriors spent time in Daiyu. It's not like you can ask anyone your questions right now, Mulan scolded herself. Focus on the fight. She stomped on one of the demons' chains. The rest of the demons stepped back, putting a good distance between them and her. Making use of the break, Mulan untied the knot in her head. Her hair fumbled down again, brushing against the nape of her neck. She unfastened her armor, freeing her shoulders of their heavy burden. The demons watched her in disbelief. A girl? I am Mulan. She raised her sword high. She'd never fought as herself before. As a woman, not a woman pretending to be a man. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more fears that she'd endanger herself and her family. She was who she'd always wanted to be. Even if that feeling could only last here in Daiyu, even if they made it back to the real world and she had to go back to pretending to be Ping, Mulan knew she'd never forget it. Taking off that mask was exhilarating. It spurred her courage. Her sword blazed brighter than before. The demons raised their shields to protect themselves from her sword's glare. "I'm trying to reach the portal with my friends," Mulan shouted over their cries. "I give you this one opportunity to leave me in peace." "You think we're afraid of it, girl? No one wants to accept my offer?" Mulan scraped her boots against the rock. "Your loss." With an unanimous howl, the demons charged. "Have courage." She half closed her eyes, remembering her months training under Shang's command. He taught his soldiers to outrun an onslaught of burning arrows, to turn a simple wooden pole into a deadly weapon, to fire arrows into pomegranates in mid-air. All achievements she thought were impossible, until they weren't. Speed, endurance, strength, precision, focus, confidence. Mulan told herself. "I am the coursing river, the raging fire. I am the warrior." She waited until the demons were close enough that she could smell their rotten breath. "Now!" Mulan thrust her sword into the lava steaming through the rock and heaved upward, swooping the burning embers into the demons' eyes. They screamed, wailing in pain and flailing for their eyes. A few still attacked, shoving their swords and spears blindly in her direction. Mulan picked her first target. She swept a foot forward and lunged, countered one demon's attack and then kicked him in the shin and tripped him. He fell over the ledge. Like with the ghost bandits, she slashed through the demon's spears and whips and swords. This surprised Huguai's soldiers, and she destroyed as many of their weapons as she could before the demons had recovered from her initial attack. Larger demons appeared, emerging from the boiling craters. They looked much like the others, except they had odd numbers of eyes and arms and ears that looked stitched together out of different creatures, part bear, part tiger, part snake. She gripped her shield, kept it high over her chest. The demons were large and powerful. They attacked high, above her ribs and side. Their only weakness was their lack of speed. Mulan needed to use her smaller size to her advantage. She was able to evade most of their attacks with her nimble footwork and quick thinking. She even managed to take two of the demons accidentally stride each other by ducking right before they swung at her. But she knew it was only a matter of time before they defeated her. Her wrists started to tire from the thrusting and blocking. The arm carrying her sword shuddered every time a spear or sword jabbed at it. Her muscles tightened and her grip faltered. Someone's chain whip lashed her arm, and she cried out in pain. Ignoring the searing pain in her arm, Mulan dropped the shield. She couldn't carry it anymore. She'd have to use only her sword. The demons could sense her tiring. They flanked her, 3 on each side. "She's weak," they said. "Let's finish her off." They attacked, but she was ready for them. She ducked and drew a sharp arc across their calves. Ash poured out instead of blood. From their screams she knew she'd hurt them. Hurting them wasn't the goal. Stopping them was. She was gaining ground. Holding her palm to the flat of her blade, she pushed the closest demon into the bubbling crater. Another whipped her back with his chain. Mulan arched in pain, feeling the searing lash cut into her flesh. The demon laughed, and came down his chain again. This time Mulan jumped to the side and blocked the chain with her sword, catching it to the blade. She yanked the chain away and coiled it over her wrist. "Shang should have included these in our training," she thought as she caught her breath. "If I could get out of here, I'll bring it up." She charged at the closest 2 demons, wrapping the chain around their legs as she dodged their attacks. Then as they stumbled toward her, she blocked their attacks and pushed them off the cauldron. One by one they fell, but Mulan didn't give herself a moment to rejoice. She'd learned that mistake the first time, with Shan Yu. One last demon awaited her. It was just her luck that he was also the biggest. She threw her shoulders back so she could look bigger than she was and copied Shishi's best, most intimidating snarl. The demon roared in response. His sword was as broad as her face, and it whooshed in the air whenever he swung. Mulan darted away as he attacked, dodging and crouching as the demons heaved his sword at her head. As he charged, she pivoted away from the brink and ducked, only letting herself breathe when the demon slipped and tumbled off the cauldron. Panting, Mulan bent over her knees. Her sweat dripped onto the ground. Quickly, she caught her breath and scoured the area for signs of Shishi and Shang. She trained her eyes on Huguai's wings, gliding above the volcano, then on Shang's luminous blue form and Shishi's tattered golden mane. The fire demon must have been after Shang and Shishi this entire time, but but to her relief, her friends had managed to avoid him and climb back up into the top of the cauldron. They were on the other side, the right side of the river. The pillar leading up to Yudu was just behind them. So why aren't they leaving? Go! Mulan shouted. This is your chance. The wind swallowed her words, but Shang turned to her, his brow furrowed. We're not leaving without you, his expression read. No, Mulan said under her breath, but she knew Shang was stubborn, just as stubborn as she. Her friends couldn't defeat Hugat without her help, but she couldn't help them from here. She had to cross the river of hopelessness, somehow. Quickly, Mulan charted a path toward the river, running from rock to rock, hiding behind them so she wouldn't attract the fire demon's attention. Getting to the river was the easy part. How she'd cross it was another story. She'd have to figure it out, and soon, before Hu Guai killed Shang and Shishi, or threw them into the river's treacherous black waters, and everything was lost.